demonstrates in a sustained and verifiable way that it has ceased its proliferation of missiles and missile technology. The committee also found that the PRC tried to influence our policy and politics by covert campaign contributions. I believe there can be no doubt about it. There is, however, very little intelligence information on which to base a conclusion as to the depth and breadth of this effort. It is, however, very disturbing to a lot of us. Let me make one final point. This investigation did not look, as most of you know, at Chinese nuclear espionage, and this report does not address that issue. The committee is in the middle of an investigation into these matters, and we will continue to hold hearings and collect information, working together. But the evidence of nuclear espionage underscores just how serious our findings are. The committee concluded that U.S. technology will enable the Chinese to improve their ICBMs. Nuclear espionage, it appears, may have helped them improve their nuclear warheads. What a deadly combination. I'm deeply concerned about the combined effect of these two transfers of sensitive U.S. technology, and we're calling on the President to move quickly to implement the committee's recommendations and put into place the safeguards we need, I believe, to protect our national interests. Senator Kerry.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your work in making certain that this product, this report, is a bipartisan report. I fully support every word that is in this report, and hope that it contributes to making the United States more safe from the threat, especially in this case, of ballistic missiles. Let me first talk about the campaign finance section of the report, and there are really two reports in one here. We do not, as a result of producing a report with both of these things in there, make any allegation that the two are connected. There's a report on the Chinese effort to influence our election process, both the presidential election and the congressional election, indeed of state elections as well. And there's a report on the potential transfer of technology as a result of policy decisions to allow U.S. satellite companies to launch on the Chinese Long March system. As to the campaign finance report, the most disturbing thing to me about this is that we learned about the Chinese effort to influence U.S. elections, including Congress, as a consequence of published reports. In other words, we did not have this brought to our attention by the Director of Central Intelligence. It was brought to our attention after being reported in the open press. And that, to me, is the most damning thing about the entire situation. It was a serious effort to influence U.S. elections. We don't know if it succeeded. We have no evidence that any policy changes were made as a consequence of this effort, but it would have been much better for the Congress to be informed through the DCI and the DCI's effort to collect and to analyze intelligence in a timely fashion than it would for us to be surprised by this fact as turned out to be the case. So we have recommendations in here that would call upon the DCI and the FBI to do first a better job of assessing this threat and of coordinating their communication, which also did not occur. No centralized data collection. The FBI was constantly finding things that they didn't know about. They'd come to us and say, here's the last piece of information, and then 60 days later one more thing would show up from a special agent in charge of some office in the United States. So the effort by the PRC to influence the U.S. election was a very serious, a very disturbing effort, but most disturbing to me was that the Congress was not informed, and parallel with that, the lack of communication between the FBI and the CIA in that effort. And we hope that the suggestions that we made not only address China's effort, but we recommend that CIA consider all foreign efforts to influence U.S. elections and make a notification to us on a timely basis when this is happening. As to the launch of the satellites, A couple of things need to be said, I believe, to put this in perspective. First of all, according to published report, China has somewhere between 12 and 13 ballistic missiles aimed at the United States of America. It would take a minimum, again, according to published reports, of 24 hours to put the warhead on the missile. I think it's very important for us not to overestimate the nature of this threat. It is a serious threat, especially, as the chairman said, the threat of missile proliferation. China was an active proliferator, though they've decreased their proliferation behavior in the last few years. During the time when these launches were occurring, they were an active proliferator of missile technology that increased the risk in other areas. But China all by itself has not tested nuclear weapons since 1996. They have decreased their proliferation activity. And I think it's important to begin with analysis of the overall threat of China. It's a very serious threat to us, but there have been statements made that this is comparable. The Los Alamos thing, for example, is comparable to Aldrich Ames and or the Klaus Fuchs incident in the 1940s. I disagree with that, and I want to make it clear at the beginning that I've done my own analysis of the relative threat here and believe this is a very serious threat. But it has been exaggerated in some circles as to the potential damage to the United States. This report says that from the beginning there was a conflict in the policy. On the one hand, we have a policy that says that we want to allow U.S. companies to launch satellites on the Long March program. Those companies have an interest in improving China's ability to launch missiles and to launch satellites and to be effective in getting those satellites into orbit. The companies have an interest in doing so because they are putting very expensive satellites on those missiles. From a national security standpoint, however, it's in our interest for China to be less reliable, since these commercial satellites were, the commercial program is comparable, and whatever benefits they get on the commercial side is applicable to their military program. So from a national security standpoint, it's in our interest to have them be less reliable, whereas on the commercial side, there's an interest to become more reliable. And of all the things that this committee concluded, I believe that is the most damning, that we have improved as a consequence of that conflict, no matter what kind of monitoring was done. And the monitoring was sloppy. The monitoring was done by people who were not well trained. The DCI was cut out of the process. Decisions were made, as the chairman said, that placed a greater emphasis on commercial benefits rather than national security benefits. But we were not able to conclude that specific technology was transferred. The damning part was we were not able to conclude that it wasn't. There are great gaps in our knowledge as a result of the lax monitoring that was done throughout the time of this program. And we make recommendations about how to improve that monitoring and how to make it more likely that we close these gaps that were wide and leave you with the terrible feeling that perhaps something extremely valuable was transferred. That even if the monitoring had been done in a perfect fashion, we have improved China's ability to be able to launch commercial satellites, and therefore we have improved their capability to launch ballistic missiles as well. And paradoxically, as the Chinese have improved over the last couple of years, we've gotten worse. Our reliability has been going down while their reliability is going up. So I mean, one of the things that this committee recommends is that we do a study and an analysis of the decision to allow commercial satellites to be launched on the Chinese Long March program altogether, as well as making recommendations about how to improve the monitoring and the oversight if that policy is to continue. It was a very serious breach of security that we have identified in this report. We're hopeful that we can, in a constructive fashion, close the gaps that we have in our security, and we hope, as a consequence of closing those gaps, that the people of the United States of America become more safe and more secure as a consequence. Any questions?
Senator, isn't there another dilemma here that if we don't furnish this technology, our Western allies will? What about that? Do you have any suggestions for your...
That is a dilemma, and that is something that Senator Kerry has brought up before. There's going to be a bigger need for launching satellites in space, and our own companies, we don't have we've got the technology, but we hadn't got the capacity at the present to do it, and that's why they've turned to China, other than price and other countries. But if we don't do more of it ourselves, it's obviously going to go somewhere else. You want to?
Yes, I mean, just add to what the chairman said. I agree with him. And the problem for us is that we take the lead in trying to make the world safer, and we provide a deterrence for many other nations that do not have nuclear capability that are allies of ours. And I think the United States there are many examples where the United States has said we are going to do something that may not be in our economic self-interest, but is in our national security interest. And I think this is a situation that meets that kind of test, at least from the standpoint of, as far as I'm not calling today for a cessation of this program, but I definitely want a review of it. I definitely want a review of the wisdom of allowing this thing to go forward, even though I understand if we don't go forward, if we don't allow these corporations to launch, that the Chinese are saying, well, fine, if you don't use our program, then we won't let you put your satellites up.
Are you suggesting that maybe we should lean on our allies not to do it either?
Well, I'd like to see us do more of it, you know.
Yes, I mean,
and especially where it's getting into sensitive technology here.
I mean, parallel with this has been an effort to get the Chinese to decrease their proliferation activity, and for years they've said, well, we don't want to take the lead in that sort of effort. And they have been in the last few years decreasing their proliferation activities and been far more willing. So parallel with this is not just an effort to influence our allies in their behavior, but also to try to get China to accept a leading role in making the world safe, since they suffer risk as well if proliferation activity continues.